There are 5 hidden signals that can reveal he wants you deeply, but is struggling to control his feelings. And I'm about to tell you something that may sound completely backwards. The man showing you these signals may actually be acting colder toward you than almost any other man you know. The one who appears the most distant could be the one who wants you the most. The one creating space, acting as if he doesn't care, and leaving you completely confused by his mixed signals. That may be the man who is developing strong feelings and is honestly getting overwhelmed by them. I know that sounds like it makes absolutely no sense. You're probably thinking, if he really wants me, then why doesn't he simply show me? Why would he suddenly pull away? Why would he create all this confusion? Here's what you need to understand. Sometimes, the stronger a man's feelings become, the stranger his behavior can get. And many women see this happening and immediately decide that he isn't interested. They assume the distance means rejection. They walk away from a man who may actually be feeling more than he knows how to handle. They completely miss what is happening underneath the surface. So stay with me, because the next 5 signals can completely change the way you interpret his behavior. I'm going to show you the specific things he does when he is trying to hide what he feels. The tiny behaviors that reveal what his words are desperately trying to cover up. And there is one particular thing he may do that looks exactly like rejection, but can actually reveal just how emotionally affected he is by you. Once you understand this, you won't spend every night analyzing his texts or wondering whether one small change in his behavior means everything is over. You'll begin to recognize the pattern. You'll understand the difference between genuine disinterest and someone struggling with emotions he didn't expect to have. And this isn't about manipulating him or playing childish games. It's about understanding what can happen when someone develops real feelings and suddenly realizes those feelings are becoming harder to control. Feelings can be exciting, but they can also be frightening, especially when they make a person feel vulnerable. And by the end of this, you'll have a much clearer idea of what to do when a man appears to be fighting what he feels for you. You'll understand the one response that can create enough safety for him to stop running from the connection and finally face what has been growing inside him. But before we get into those 5 signals, we need to understand something much deeper. Why would his feelings frighten him in the first place? Why would liking someone turn into this strange pattern of moving closer and then suddenly pulling away? Because the real reason may surprise you. And honestly, it may even make you a little frustrated, because it often has far less to do with you than you think. So why do some men fight their feelings this way? Why can attraction sometimes create this confusing push and pull? Here's what may actually be happening. When a man begins developing strong feelings very quickly, something inside him can suddenly change. Something starts happening inside him that many women never realize. His mind can begin treating you like a threat, not a physical threat, but an emotional one. Because somewhere deep inside, he understands that if he allows himself to fully want you, you suddenly have the ability to hurt him in a way he may not be prepared for. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever wanted something so badly that actually getting it felt a little scary? Because once you finally have it, there is something precious to lose. And if you lost it afterward, the pain could feel almost impossible to handle. That is the kind of fear that may be running through his mind. The more strongly he feels about you, the more his mind can begin sounding the alarm. It becomes an automatic defense system. If I don't let myself want her too much, I can't get hurt. If I keep some distance between us, I can stay protected. If I act like I don't care, maybe these feelings will eventually disappear. But emotions don't work that way. You cannot simply command a feeling to disappear because it makes you uncomfortable. Trying to ignore it often makes it even harder to control. The feelings continue building beneath the surface until eventually they start escaping through his behavior. That's when you begin noticing the little cracks in his emotional wall, the moments when his guard drops for just a second, the reactions he didn't plan, the attention he gives you and then suddenly tries to take back. But here's where things get interesting. Many women notice these behaviors and interpret them as proof that he doesn't care, when sometimes they can actually reveal the opposite. So let's break down these 5 hidden signals one by one, and I'm warning you right now, the third signal may completely change the way you understand his behavior. You may have been seeing it as rejection this entire time. Before we get there, take a second and hit that like button, because what I'm about to explain later is so unexpected that you may honestly think it sounds impossible at first. But once you recognize this pattern in real life, you'll start noticing it everywhere. You may never look at a man's mixed signals the same way again. So let's begin. The first signal is that his attention seems extremely inconsistent. But when you look closely, there is actually a pattern behind it. One day he is everywhere. He is messaging you again and again, sending you something funny, asking how your day went, remembering small details, and staying completely engaged in the conversation. Then suddenly, the next day, it changes. His replies become short, he seems busy, he takes forever to respond. He acts almost as though you were never that important to him in the first place. And this is where many women immediately assume he is playing games or simply being unreliable. But sometimes there is another explanation. He may be fighting with himself. Every time he allows himself to get emotionally close to you, another part of him starts telling him to create distance. He moves closer because he wants the connection, then backs away because the connection is beginning to feel too powerful. That is why you need to pay attention to when the withdrawal happens. Does he become distant after you have a really meaningful conversation? Does he pull back after a night where the two of you laughed for hours? Does he suddenly become colder after you share something personal or experience a moment of genuine emotional connection? If you keep seeing that pattern, it may not be random. It could be the moment his internal alarm starts going off. And here's the part that most people completely miss. Sometimes, the better things feel between two people, the stronger the withdrawal can become afterward. You have an incredible date. Everything feels effortless. He is relaxed, open, attentive, and clearly enjoying himself. Then suddenly, he disappears for a couple of days or becomes strangely distant. You're sitting there wondering, what happened? Did I say something wrong? Did I move too fast? Did he lose interest? But what if the problem wasn't that he disliked the experience? What if the experience affected him more than he expected? What if he went home thinking about how good it felt to be around you, and that realization made him uncomfortable? That is the contradiction you need to understand. Sometimes a man doesn't pull away because the connection meant nothing. Sometimes he pulls away because the connection meant more than he was ready to admit. And if you want to understand the next signal, you need to look at what happens after he creates that distance, because that is where the real pattern begins to reveal itself. The conversation feels completely natural. Everything is flowing, relaxed, and easy. You both laugh, talk, and for a moment, it feels like there is nothing complicated about the connection. Then the next morning, silence. He doesn't message first, and when you finally reach out, his replies are short, dry, and strangely cold. Almost as if the amazing conversation from the night before never even happened. Your first reaction is probably to blame yourself. You start wondering if you said something wrong, if you misunderstood the connection, or if he suddenly realized he isn't interested after all. But what if that isn't what happened? What may actually be happening is that he woke up thinking about the conversation. He remembers how comfortable it felt, how naturally you connected, how easily he talked to you. Maybe he even shared things he normally keeps to himself. And suddenly, he realizes just how much he enjoyed being around you. That realization can scare him. So instead of moving closer, he creates distance. He pulls back to feel safe again. He tries to convince himself that the moment wasn't as important as it felt. He tells himself to calm down, stop thinking about it, and act normal. But emotions don't always listen to logic. Eventually, he comes back. Maybe it takes one day, maybe several days, but somehow he finds his way back into your space because the feelings are still there. So watch the pattern instead of judging one isolated moment. Strong connection followed by sudden distance, followed by him returning again. That cycle can reveal an internal struggle. The more often you see the same pattern, the more important it becomes to look at the whole picture rather than assuming every withdrawal means rejection. Because if he genuinely had no interest, you would usually see much more consistent behavior. He would remain distant. He wouldn't repeatedly create closeness and then return after pulling away. The push and pull is where the conflict appears. And there is another detail inside this pattern that you should notice. Watch how he behaves when he returns. Does he act as though nothing happened? Does he joke about disappearing? Does he suddenly have a convenient excuse about being busy or overwhelmed? That can be a way of protecting his pride while still finding an excuse to reconnect. He wants to come back, but he may not want to explain what caused him to leave. And that brings us to another signal you should pay close attention to. His body language can become completely inconsistent whenever he is around you. Look carefully at how he behaves physically when you are together. Maybe he keeps moving his hands, checks his phone repeatedly, adjusts his clothes, or simply cannot seem to relax. It can look like his body is caught between two opposite instincts. One part wants to move closer, while another part is telling him to protect himself and create space. He may stand very close to you one moment, then suddenly step back as if he remembered he was getting too comfortable. He might lightly touch your arm while laughing and then quickly pull away. But there is one physical detail you should watch especially closely. Pay attention to his hands. If he keeps running a hand through his hair, touching his face, or rubbing the back of his neck while talking to you, it can be a sign of nervous energy. His body may be reacting to emotions he is trying to keep under control. And there is another powerful clue. Notice whether his body naturally turns toward you even when his attention appears to be somewhere else. Maybe he is pretending to focus on his phone. Maybe he is talking to another person, but his shoulders, chest, or feet are still angled in your direction. That can reveal where his attention is naturally being pulled. His conscious mind may be trying to look casual, but his body can still respond automatically. And this is why body language can be so interesting. Words are easier to control. A person can carefully choose what to say, what not to say, and how much emotion to reveal. But unconscious physical reactions are much harder to manage perfectly all the time. His body may reveal tension, excitement, nervousness, or interest before he ever admits anything out loud. Look for the little details. Does he lean toward you when you speak, even while pretending to be relaxed? Does he start copying your movements without noticing? You cross your arms, and a moment later, he does something similar. You lean back, and shortly after, he shifts the same way. Mirroring can happen naturally when people feel connected or drawn toward each other. It is not absolute proof by itself, but when it appears alongside several other signs, it becomes much more interesting. So imagine this. He is trying to act completely unaffected, but his body keeps matching yours. That is the internal conflict happening right in front of you. His behavior says, "I don't care." His body keeps moving closer. And there is another small detail that many people overlook. Watch where his feet are pointing. It sounds strange, but people often position their feet toward whatever currently holds their attention or interest. So even if he is looking at his phone or speaking with someone else, notice where his feet naturally point. If his body repeatedly angles toward you, it can be another small piece of the bigger picture. And then there are his eyes. Don't only notice whether he makes eye contact, Pay attention to what happens immediately afterward. Does he hold your gaze for just a little longer than normal and then suddenly look away? Does he seem to catch himself looking at you and quickly redirect his attention? Does he appear unusually aware of where you are in the room? Those small reactions can suggest that he is highly conscious of you and trying to manage how obvious his attention becomes. Now we get to the third signal, and this is the one that sounds almost completely backwards. Sometimes he becomes more teasing and challenging the stronger his attraction feels. I'm not talking about genuine cruelty, disrespect, or behavior that makes you feel small. I'm talking about increased teasing, sarcasm, playful jokes, and little challenges that seem to happen more often with you than with everyone else. He may tease you constantly. He may make playful comments about the things you do. He may pretend that nothing you say impresses him. He might roll his eyes, challenge your opinions, or act like he has to disagree with everything you say. So why would someone behave that way when they are actually interested? Because vulnerability can feel much more uncomfortable than teasing. If admitting his feelings feels risky, keeping everything wrapped inside humor can feel safer. Instead of saying, "I really enjoy being around you," he jokes with you. Instead of admitting that he notices everything about you, he points out your little habits. Instead of showing genuine admiration, he pretends that he is completely unimpressed. It keeps the interaction emotionally safer for him. But here is the important distinction. Playful teasing is not the same thing as disrespect. If his comments are cruel, humiliating, controlling, or consistently hurtful, don't romanticize that behavior. But if the teasing is light, mutual, and mixed with clear attention and warmth, then it may reveal something different. And here is the real clue to watch. The more emotionally affected he seems to be, the more he may try to hide it behind jokes, sarcasm, and playful challenges. The teasing becomes a shield. He can stay close to you without having to admit just how much he cares. And once you notice that pattern, the behavior starts making a lot more sense. Because using humor to create a little distance can feel much safer than letting you see how deeply he actually cares. But pay attention to what happens when you become genuine with him first. When you open up about something personal, emotional, or meaningful, his entire energy can suddenly change. The jokes slow down, the sarcasm fades. For a brief moment, you get to see a much softer version of him that he normally keeps hidden. That change is important. That is the moment when the real person underneath the protection starts showing through. Everything else may simply be a shield he uses to keep himself from feeling exposed. A lot of women see all the teasing and immediately assume he only sees them as a friend, or worse, that he doesn't respect them. But if you notice that he playfully teases you much more than he teases other women, it can be a sign that you hold a different place in his attention. Of course, the key is knowing the difference between playful connection and genuine disrespect. Watch his eyes when he jokes with you. Watch his smile. Is there warmth behind it? Does he immediately look at your face to see how you reacted? Does it actually matter to him whether you laughed? If he is watching your reaction and clearly wants you to enjoy the interaction, that is very different from dismissing you. It may be his way of creating a connection while keeping emotional risk low. And there is another little detail that can tell you even more. What happens when one of his jokes goes too far? Maybe he says something that doesn't land well, and you can actually see him realize it. His expression changes. He becomes quieter. He tries to correct himself or soften what he said. That small moment of concern can reveal that your feelings matter to him more than he wants to admit. He may want to look completely relaxed, but he doesn't like the idea of genuinely hurting you. And here is another layer that many people overlook. The teasing can become even stronger when other men are around. If he suddenly becomes more playful, more sarcastic, or more focused on getting your attention in a group, There may be a reason. He cannot openly show too much interest without revealing himself, so humor becomes a safer excuse to interact with you. He can keep talking to you, make you laugh, challenge you, and keep your attention on him without having to openly admit what he is feeling. Now pay attention to the next signal, because this one is much harder to fake. He remembers the little things about you. And I mean the tiny things. That random story you mentioned 2 weeks ago about something that happened during your day. He brings it up later as if you told him yesterday. You once casually mentioned a food you hate, and weeks later he remembers it when you're choosing something to eat. You told him about a goal you're working toward, and later he asks how it is going. These details may seem small, but they reveal where his attention has been going. When someone is genuinely interested in another person, their mind tends to give that person's words more importance. They notice things. They remember things. They connect information together without consciously trying to do it. And when a man is trying to convince himself that he doesn't care, that can create a strange contradiction. His behavior may say it doesn't matter, while his memory says something completely different. He remembers the things you mention because some part of him is paying very close attention. And this next part is especially important. Does he remember the details that most people would completely forget? Something you said in passing, a tiny preference, a story that wasn't even important at the time. If he can bring it up weeks later, that tells you he wasn't simply hearing your words, he was actually taking them in. He might remember that you had an important meeting on Tuesday. He might remember that you dislike mushrooms. He might remember that your mum's birthday is coming soon. He might even remember the name of your childhood pet. You never asked him to remember these things. You probably didn't even realize he was listening that closely. They were just casual details that came up naturally, but somehow they stayed in his mind. And later, he brings them back into the conversation. That is why this signal can be so revealing. You can't easily force this kind of attention. Most people forget ordinary details because their brains decide those details aren't important enough to keep. But when someone is emotionally focused on you, even small pieces of information can stick. His attention may be telling you something his words are refusing to say. And notice whether he remembers things you care about and then actually uses that information. Maybe you casually mention that you love a certain kind of coffee, and one day he unexpectedly brings it for you. Maybe you say you've been wanting to watch a particular movie, and later he suggests it himself. Maybe you mention a place you want to visit, and weeks later he remembers it. That is more than simply listening. That is listening and then acting. Sometimes actions become easier than words because words can make feelings feel too exposed. Now we come to another powerful signal. He behaves noticeably differently around you than he does around everyone else. You've watched him with his friends. He's relaxed, he's loud, he's funny. He doesn't seem to think twice about what he says. But when you're nearby, something changes. There is a different energy. He becomes more aware of himself. Maybe he adjusts his clothes, checks his appearance, fixes his hair, watches his words more carefully. Suddenly he seems to notice himself in a way he normally doesn't. That isn't necessarily awkwardness, it can simply be increased self-awareness because your opinion matters to him. But there is one reaction that can be especially revealing. Watch what happens when you casually mention another man. His entire energy may shift. He becomes quieter. He makes a joke that sounds casual but has an edge underneath it. He suddenly asks questions that seem innocent but are strangely specific. Maybe he wants to know who the guy is, how you know him, or whether you're actually interested in him. If he acts completely unaffected until another man enters the conversation, pay attention. Jealousy can be difficult to hide because it is emotional rather than logical. When a man is trying to suppress feelings, the idea of you becoming close to someone else can trigger a reaction before he has time to control it. And here is what it can look like in everyday life. You mentioned spending time with your girlfriends, and he acts completely normal. Nothing changes. Then you casually mention that some guy was there too, and suddenly his behavior shifts. Maybe he goes quiet for a moment. Maybe he makes a sarcastic comment. Maybe he starts asking several questions that he doesn't really need answers to. He may be trying to understand whether this other man is someone he should worry about. And logically, he knows he doesn't have a claim on you. You're not officially together. He hasn't clearly told you how he feels. He may not have even made a move. But emotions don't always wait for permission. The idea of you choosing someone else can still bother him. And that reaction can reveal that you matter to him more than he wants to admit. Also watch what happens when other men are physically around you. Does he suddenly find a reason to stand closer? Does he enter the conversation more often? Does he become funnier, louder, or more confident? Does he subtly try to show you his best side? That can be competitive behavior. He may feel threatened without ever saying the words. Instead of openly admitting that he wants your attention, he tries to earn it indirectly. But now we reach the part where many women make the biggest mistake. They notice all these signs and then respond in one of two extreme ways. They either push him aggressively for answers, or they become completely frustrated and disappear. Neither reaction is likely to create the clarity they want, and one of them can make the situation even worse. If you immediately demand certainty, asking, "What are we?" or "Do you actually like me?" while he is already struggling with vulnerability, you may increase the pressure he is trying to escape. If you put all your feelings on the table, simply hoping that he will finally confess everything, you cannot guarantee that he will respond the way you want. When someone is fighting their emotions, pressure rarely makes those emotions easier to face. You cannot argue someone into vulnerability. You cannot force someone to confess by giving them more and more attention. But there is another mistake that can be just as damaging. Completely walking away and hoping he suddenly figures everything out may only reinforce the story he has already been telling himself. He may decide that keeping his guard up was the right choice. He may convince himself that the connection wasn't real, or that he avoided a problem before it became serious. So what should you actually do? The answer is simpler than most people expect. Create emotional safety without becoming his emotional caretaker. Be steady when he is inconsistent. Don't copy his hot and cold behavior. If he becomes distant, don't immediately chase him. But don't suddenly become cruel or distant just to punish him either. Stay calm. Stay grounded. Keep your own life moving. Show him through your behavior that you are comfortable with yourself and that you don't need to control every interaction. You can be warm without being desperate. You can be interested without chasing. You can give him room without disappearing. And that balance can do something powerful. It allows him to experience connection without feeling trapped by it. It shows him that getting closer to you does not automatically mean losing his independence. And when the pressure disappears, he has more room to confront what he actually feels, instead of constantly running from it. This is the part most people miss, so stay with me, because the next step is where the entire dynamic can begin to change.